Adam Schiff remained frozen in his seat as a solitary 8-year-old classified document pulled from the depths of a congressional vault abruptly destroyed his entire political facade. Resting quietly in the House Intelligence Committee's secure vault for 8 years was a specific record detailing exactly what Schiff was told during a briefing in the harsh winter of February 2018, 6 whole months before he appeared on CBS to assure the nation that evidence of collusion was hiding in plain sight. This document made it unmistakably clear that absolutely no evidence existed. He reviewed it, understood it, and still confidently took to national TV to claim the exact opposite. The moment Speaker Mike Johnson carried that newly declassified record into the brightly illuminated hearing room, it took only 40 minutes to finally answer the agonizing question 330 million Americans had been asking for 6 tiring years. Where is the evidence? Prepare to watch the explosive clash between a classified briefing record and 6 years of carefully rehearsed television interviews, a ruthless showdown where the undeniable truth of the document ultimately wins. Mr. Speaker, I served as a federal prosecutor long before you were a state legislator. I put an actual Russian spy behind bars, not the fabricated ones your party creates, Schiff opened. His voice oozed with calculated arrogance as he aggressively listed his resume, reminding the room that he had chaired the Intelligence Committee, spearheaded the impeachment of a corrupt president, served on the January 6th panel, and was now facing ridiculous questions from someone who supported overturning an election based on weak conspiracy theories. 6 minutes into an opening statement structured like a veteran prosecutor's closing argument, Schiff had designed every single sentence to carry weight simultaneously, propping up his own authority while fiercely attacking his interrogator's credibility. Convening in the historic H313 Capitol Room, the House Select Hearing on Classified Information and Intelligence Conduct was broadcast live on C-SPAN, with major networks showing a tense split screen. It brought Schiff right back to the chamber he left after securing his 2024 Senate seat, and he sat there radiating the confidence of a man returning to his old domain, smoothly stating, with all due respect, Mr. Speaker, I've been in rooms where evidence matters. This isn't one of them. Right behind the Democratic side of the gallery, a familiar noise rose up, the eager applause of fiercely loyal supporters, validating a politician they already unconditionally trusted. However, a massive sense of irony filled the room. The man boasting about relying on evidence was the same politician formerly censured by the House for deceiving the public, having claimed on TV to hold solid proof that 4 separate federal probes later confirmed was non-existent, and who was now facing an FBI whistleblower complaint. This complaint alleged he had approved the leaking of classified national security details to attack a sitting president. Positioned perfectly at the center of the dais in a crisp dark suit and red tie, Speaker Mike Johnson looked completely composed. He wore the calm demeanor of a former constitutional law professor who has already seen his failing students' grades, understands the upcoming conversation will be painful, and chooses to be polite, knowing that in such a tense environment, politeness strikes far harder than hostility. A massive, meticulously color-coded binder rested neatly on his desk, but concealed within a distinct sleeve, marked with a strict classification stamp, was a document formally declassified by the Director of National Intelligence at exactly 6:47 a.m. that very morning. Until that moment, no one aside from Johnson, the committee's legal counsel, and the DNI had ever seen it. Senator, I appreciate that you brought up evidence multiple times, Johnson remarked without a trace of spite, systematically flipping open the binder to point out that on the 20th of March, 2017, during NBC's Meet the Press, Schiff asserted there was circumstantial evidence of collusion. Skipping any dramatic preamble, the first blow was delivered with clinical accuracy, putting Schiff's legendary poise to the test, the unshakable composure of a lawyer who spent 2.5 decades mastering how to hide his emotions in court and on committee panels. While his outward calm remained intact, it required an enormous amount of visible effort. To an expert observer, he was trying about 15% too hard, projecting the frantic stability of a person exhausting themselves just to look unbothered. Glancing down at the highlighted text and then locking eyes with Schiff, Johnson clearly stated, "Let's talk about evidence, Senator, because I have your words. I have the investigations that followed your words. And right in between, I have something the Intelligence Committee kept hidden from the public." Johnson laid out his plan to recite the statements chronologically, followed by the investigative findings, and lastly, the hidden truth in the middle. He started with the 20th of March, 2017, quote, regarding circumstantial evidence of collusion, emphasizing that circumstantial is a legal safety net, implying a lack of concrete proof, a totally understandable stance at the very beginning of the probe. Pulling out another paper from just 3 days later, the 23rd of March, 2017, Johnson recalled an MSNBC MTP Daily interview where Chuck Todd asked if the case was merely circumstantial. Schiff had responded, "No, there is evidence that is not circumstantial, and it is very much worthy of investigation." Displaying the statements together, Johnson highlighted the alarming speed of this escalation, pointing out that in a mere 72 hours, with zero new public information, the legal safety net vanished completely, shifting Schiff from making vague suggestions to declaring direct evidence. Under the harsh committee lights, Schiff's right hand discreetly grabbed his pen, a typical lawyer's coping mechanism when they crave a physical shield against a hostile room. He began rolling the pen rapidly between his thumb and index finger, a frantic attempt to burn off nervous tension that had nowhere else to go. Producing a third document from an August 2018 CBS News appearance, Johnson read Schiff's confident claim that there's plenty of evidence of collusion or conspiracy in plain sight. Locking eyes with him, Johnson noted, "Plenty in plain sight, Senator. Those are not the words of someone hedging. Those are the guarantees of a former prosecutor ready to take a case to trial." The frantic rolling stopped instantly as Schiff pressed his thumb fiercely against the pen's cap. While this immense pressure went unnoticed by the live audience, the C-SPAN cameras captured the stark white of his thumbnail bearing down forcefully on the hard plastic, moving steadily to April 2019. Just a month after the Mueller report dropped, Johnson quoted, "I've been very clear over the past year and a half that there is ample evidence of collusion in plain sight." Johnson placed heavy emphasis on the word ample, meaning not just a little, but a massive amount, causing Schiff to gently place the pen down, his hand quietly giving up its only source of physical comfort. Tracing this unbelievable rhetorical journey, Johnson highlighted how Schiff went from circumstantial in March 2017 to not circumstantial a few days later, to plenty in plain sight by mid-2018, and finally to ample by spring 2019. He demonstrated how, over 2 years, the phrasing violently morphed from cautious to completely absolute. Shifting his stance, Johnson carefully arranged a fresh row of stark documents right beneath those explosive media quotes, creating a devastating top and bottom contrast. He delivered the first major hit using Robert Mueller's March 2019 special counsel report, the culmination of 2 years, 2,800 subpoenas, 500 witnesses, and 500 search warrants. Reading its conclusion like a physical blow, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government. Schiff's jaw immediately tightened into the harsh, aggressive set he had spent 25 years perfecting for cross-examinations to project absolute dominance. However, trapped in the suffocating hearing room as the one being interrogated, his offensive facial posture looked wildly out of place, resembling a warrior clumsily trying to swing a heavy shield as if it were a sword. Transitioning to John Durham's May 2023 Special Counsel report, which took 4 years to complete, Johnson highlighted its identical conclusion. Neither federal law enforcement nor the intelligence apparatus had any actual proof of collusion when Crossfire Hurricane began. He hammered home the emptiness of the claims by stressing any actual evidence, none at any time. Schiff's interwoven fingers, which had taken the place of his discarded pen, gripped together so fiercely that his knuckles turned the specific shade of white that distinguishes a relaxed hand from one under unbearable strain. Next, Johnson presented Inspector General Michael Horowitz's December 2019 report, which outlined 17 major flaws in the FISA applications and emphasized that FISA Judge Rosemary Collier explicitly declared the FBI had misled the court, noting that misled was the powerful tribunal's deliberate choice of words, standing over this paper timeline of 2 years of media appearances, 3 major probes, and 1 historic censure. Johnson painted a clear picture. On the top row sat Schiff's escalating promises of circumstantial, plenty, ample, and plain sight evidence. On the bottom row sat the crushing reality of did not establish, no actual evidence, 17 critical errors, and a misled court. Staring at Schiff with composed intensity, Johnson announced he wanted to share some math, channeling his former career as an educator. He pulled out an extensive committee analysis of Schiff's TV interviews from January 2017 to April 2019, revealing an astonishing 237 appearances across 6 different networks over 27 months, where he purposefully threw around words like evidence, collusion, or conspiracy. Throughout those 237 segments, Schiff tied the word evidence directly to collusion exactly 412 times. Johnson pointedly stated 412 times, "Senator, you told America you had evidence, not once, not 10 times, 412 times," exposing the harsh reality that while Mueller's 2,800 subpoenas turned up nothing, Schiff's 412 TV spots somehow uncovered a mountain of it. Johnson suggested that Schiff was either the most brilliant intelligence analyst in human history, or he was deliberately going on television to broadcast claims he knew were totally unsupported by the highly classified intelligence he was privileged to see. Asking if Schiff secretly possessed information Mueller lacked, Johnson revealed the committee's ultimate goal was to answer one fundamental question. What was Schiff actually told behind closed doors regarding this so-called evidence? Reaching into the heavily classified section of his binder, Johnson retrieved the intelligence community's briefing summary from the 14th of February 2018, which had been declassified solely for this event at 6:47 a.m. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly, the air turning heavy and stifling, characteristic of a moment where a single piece of paper is about to alter history forever. After confirming that this briefing was given specifically to the chairman and ranking member, Johnson read the devastating text. At this time, the intelligence community has not identified corroborated evidence establishing coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russian government beyond the publicly known contacts that have been reported to Congress. Placing this bombshell document right in the middle of the 2 existing rows of paper, Johnson provided the ultimate proof that finally settled the burning 6-year mystery. Did he actually know? Fixing his gaze firmly on Schiff, Johnson reiterated, has not identified corroborated evidence, pointing out that this was the exact truth the intelligence community securely handed him on February 14th, 2018. Yet, a mere 6 months later, Schiff willingly went on CBS to boldly assure the nation that ample evidence was sitting in plain sight. Staring at him with absolute finality, Johnson explained that making an honest mistake is a normal human flaw. However, the trap snapped shut as he pointed out that Schiff was formally briefed, directly informed by the intelligence community via a document bearing his own signature that no verified evidence existed, and still intentionally went on TV to lie to 330 million people. Johnson declared that such behavior isn't an error. It's knowing the absolute truth and deliberately choosing the lie. Schiff's eyes squinted sharply, a defensive reflex from a deeply trapped man, stunned by the sight of that exact declassified document sitting on a public desk. The very paper meant to stay buried forever was now exposed beneath bright studio lights, captured by 40 cameras, and broadcast to 20 million live viewers. His tightly clasped hands suddenly broke apart, his pale fingers frantically unlacing as he slammed both palms flat against the hard table. His fingers splayed wide in the raw, vulnerable pose of someone who has suddenly stopped holding on, realizing in a terrifying flash that he had absolutely no strategic moves left to play. Completely unmoved by the senator's physical breakdown, Johnson simply flipped to the next tab, redirecting the interrogation to September 26th, 2019, the exact day Schiff confidently read a fabricated version of President Trump's call with Ukrainian President Zelensky into the official congressional record. Placing two transcripts side by side, Johnson showcased the genuine, verified White House record on the left against the manipulated version Schiff performed on the right. He read the shocking line from Schiff's fake script, "I want you to make up dirt on my political opponent," and immediately verified that those sensational words were completely absent from the real text, demonstrating that Schiff had fabricated quotes and passionately read them into history on live TV. Schiff's body contorted into a completely new, unsettling kind of stiffness. It was the frantic rigidity of a man fighting with everything he had to stop himself from violently interrupting, burning through mental energy, just like a massive concrete dam strains to hold back the crushing weight of a raging river. Acknowledging Schiff's previous defense that the reading was merely a parody, Johnson's voice dripped with disbelief. He reminded the veteran attorney that passing off fake testimony as reality is never just a joke. It is blatant fraud against the tribunal, especially when done under oath during a live broadcast of a formal congressional hearing. Leaning in, Johnson asserted that his biggest worry was how that twisted parody ended up there in the first place, pulling from his binder a series of internal emails acquired from Schiff's top aides right before that hearing. Finally, breaking under the pressure, Schiff frantically tried to cut in, sputtering, "Mr. Speaker," the characterization of, but Johnson merely raised his right index finger, the ultimate commanding gesture of a seasoned teacher who had patiently listened for half an hour and was now cashing in that authority with a single silent order to hold on. Schiff's broken sentence lingered awkwardly in the tense air, sadly incomplete. His mouth hung foolishly open for a painful second before snapping shut as his body locked into an even deeper state of terrifying paralysis. Johnson flawlessly recited the internal message from the 24th of September 2019, just 2 days prior to the hearing, which showed Schiff's staff openly strategizing about the fabricated reading. The email explicitly stated he wants to read the summary version, not the verbatim transcript. We know it'll get clipped as the real thing. By the time the correction cycles, the clip will have 10 million views. The clip travels before the correction. Placing the devastating email on the table, Johnson laid bare the chilling truth. These highly paid staffers fully understood that the fake transcript would be rapidly broadcast and shared as if it were authentic. They had meticulously engineered it as a malicious, calculated plot to lie boldly on camera, fully aware that the deception would spread infinitely faster than the truth ever could. The grand room fell dead silent as the horrifying phrase, "the clip travels before the correction," sank in. Everyone realized this wasn't just a one-off parody. It was the foundational strategy of outrunning the truth with a lie, a dark playbook that defined every single action Adam Schiff had taken over the last 6 years. Every occasion he aggressively proclaimed, "I have seen evidence" on national television was merely a manufactured clip, engineered to go viral before Mueller, Durham, or Horowitz could ever release the facts to correct it, cementing the reality that this cynical manipulation was his entire career strategy. Shifting gears, Johnson brought up another public claim Schiff made just before the impeachment probe kicked off, quoting him, telling the press, "We have not spoken directly with the whistleblower." Instantly, Johnson revealed the damning truth that Schiff's own staff had engaged in secret communications with the whistleblower well before the official complaint was even lodged, proving Schiff had shamelessly deceived the public regarding his office's key involvement. Shaking his head, Johnson outlined the inescapable cycle: state the lie confidently on TV, let the explosive soundbite go viral, softly issue a correction long after the devastation is complete, and blindly pray the truth never catches up. He coldly recounted this avalanche of deceit before firmly declaring that the truth was finally catching up to him right at that very moment, bringing up the deep embarrassment of the 21st of June 2023. Johnson reminded the chamber that the House took a historic 213 to 209 vote to officially censure Schiff. He read the exact text of the resolution, confirming Schiff was reprimanded specifically for deceiving the American public and engaging in behavior unworthy of a congressman, a formalized voting-based confirmation that he had profoundly lied to the nation. However, Johnson pointed out that Schiff immediately capitalized on the outrage following the censure, raking in an astounding $8.1 million, largely from small-dollar contributors who genuinely placed their faith in him. Presenting two fresh documents side by side, Johnson contrasted the severe congressional censure with a glossy fundraising email to expose exactly what his loyal supporters were fed. He methodically showed how the official reprimand explicitly condemned him for misleading the American public, while his manipulative campaign emails brazenly told donors he was being targeted for standing up to Donald Trump. Going through it line by line, Johnson pointed out that the resolution specifically punished conduct unbecoming, yet the campaign blast falsely framed it as being punished for defending democracy, where the official record strictly condemned his falsehoods and misrepresentations. The fundraising plea outrageously claimed he was simply being targeted by MAGA extremists for telling the truth. Holding the heavy document high, Johnson gently drove his final point home, stressing that the actual censor resolution spanned 4 dense pages, yet absolutely nowhere did it mention standing up to Trump, defending democracy, or being honest. He proved that while the official government record declared him a liar, his fundraising machine enthusiastically tricked his supporters into believing he was a heroic martyr being persecuted for his honesty. Schiff's artificial calm, the same fragile act that had previously abandoned his rolling pen, was now painfully obvious to everyone watching. The overcompensation had skyrocketed to a shocking 25%. His eerie stillness was far too rigid, his breathing unnaturally calculated, leaving the entire chamber to witness a man exhausting himself just to perform the illusion of calm. Clearly disgusted, Johnson laid out how innocent donors honestly believed they were financing political bravery, when in reality, their $8.1 million was fueling a gigantic cover-up. He proclaimed that the initial deception was, "I have seen evidence," and the second, more monstrous deception was convincing his own supporters he was censured for bravery rather than dishonesty, successfully generating $8.1 million from a lie stacked on top of another lie, alerting the room that the focus was moving to national security. Johnson's voice turned ice cold as he referenced a highly volatile declassified August 2025 White House document. It contained sworn testimony from a veteran intelligence official and registered Democrat who swore under oath that Adam Schiff had personally greenlit the strategic leaking of classified data to favorable journalists to hurt President Trump. Pointing to a different file, Johnson unveiled a completely distinct declassified FBI 302 report that firmly backed up the whistleblower's claim, confirming that sensitive national security secrets were being systematically leaked under Schiff's direct orders. Extracting the absolute last piece of evidence from the depths of his binder, Johnson revealed a committee-prepared damage assessment provided by the Director of National Intelligence. It conclusively pinpointed 11 specific occasions over an incredibly turbulent 8-month span where top-secret information shared exclusively in secure committee briefings magically found its way into mainstream news reports a mere 72 hours later. Trying frantically to speak up for a miserable third time, Schiff begged Mr. Speaker the characterization of falling back on the exact same defensive phrasing that had sadly reduced him to a broken man trapped with a single useless line. This time around, Johnson didn't even bother lifting his authoritative finger to silence him. He just kept reading the devastating report at the exact same commanding volume, letting Schiff's feeble, trailing words get completely drowned out by the overwhelming force of his own delivery. Detailing the global fallout, Johnson highlighted that in 7 of those 11 destructive leaks, the unlawfully released intelligence ended up in the analytical reports of foreign spy agencies within just 5 to 9 days of hitting the American press. Trying to use the word characterization for a pathetic third attempt, Schiff's famously booming voice completely failed him. A horrifying microtremor struck the second syllable, shockingly loud on the sensitive C-SPAN microphones as a sudden 1.5 hertz spike in pitch. It was the involuntary sound of human vocal cords snapping under unbearable pressure after violently confronting a terrifying reality they couldn't process, scientifically proving that the legendary prosecutor's voice was cracking from the inside out. Coldly detailing the 4th leak, which involved a secure classified meeting on Tuesday, the 7th of March 2018, attended exclusively by Schiff and 6 other members, Johnson noted that exactly 72 hours later, on Thursday, March 9th, the Washington Post published a bombshell story filled with highly sensitive facts completely unavailable to the public, delivering the chilling punchline. Johnson pointed out that exactly 1 week later, on March 16th, a foreign intelligence report heavily cited that exact same classified data. He outlined the disastrous pipeline, a secure Tuesday briefing, a Thursday newspaper bombshell, and foreign intelligence absorption the following week, a precise timeline that repeated itself 11 times over 18 months. Dropping the massive assessment onto the strained desk, Johnson stared right through Schiff to deliver the fatal strike. Senator, that's not a leak. That's a schedule. The word schedule dropped into the dead center of the room with the devastating impact of a final verdict. It wasn't framed as a wild accusation, but rather as a cold, clinical fact, making it infinitely harder to dispute because it merely described what was painfully obvious to everyone. Schiff's abandoned plastic pen abruptly rolled exactly 2 inches to the left entirely on its own accord. It had been violently bumped by an invisible, rapid tremor vibrating straight through the heavy table from Schiff's tense forearms, which were pressed desperately against the edge. It was the eerie moment his own body involuntarily produced tangible proof of fear that his conscious mind was desperately trying to hide. Flipping to the absolute final tab, Johnson's tone shifted dramatically into the quiet, sorrowful voice of a deeply concerned pastor. He carefully summarized the ruins of a career heavily founded on deception, reminding Schiff of the hundreds of interviews over 6 painful years where he promised America he had absolutely seen ample proof of Russian collusion. Yet, Mueller's massive web of 2,800 subpoenas uncovered nothing. Durham found absolutely nothing. Horowitz exposed 17 glaring errors, and the FISA court determined the FBI had grossly misled them. He ended with the ultimate nail in the coffin, the 14th of February 2018 classified memo bearing Schiff's own signature, proving the intelligence community had confirmed zero corroborated evidence. Leaning in with the genuine disappointment of a mentor, Johnson explained that he always taught his young students that the single most vital thing a person can do with their words is to tell the absolute truth. He highlighted the deep betrayal felt by 330 million Americans who had no way to verify those wild claims and were forced to blindly trust a powerful intelligence chairman who looked them in the eye and lied. Springing the trap completely, Johnson's voice turned to steel as he commanded. The question, Senator, where is the evidence? You said you saw it. Show it to this committee right now. If you truly have evidence of Russian collusion that 4 federal investigations completely missed, that the intelligence community explicitly told you did not exist, show it. This is your moment. A heavy silence instantly swallowed the room, dragging on for 5, 10, and ultimately 15 excruciating seconds. It was the longest, most chilling pause of the entire hearing, transforming 15 seconds in room H 313 into what felt like a suffocating eternity. Schiff's renowned legal composure finally hit its breaking point, completely freezing him into an invisible shell where his face, hands, and breathing went totally motionless. It was the disastrous result of a complex mental defense system slamming into a question it simply wasn't programmed to answer, crashing completely into absolute nothingness. His aggressive prosecutor's eyes remained locked in a wide, unblinking glare, fundamentally realizing for the very first time in a quarter century that this lethal question could never be answered because it demanded a physical object that simply did not exist. Those 15 agonizing seconds of failing to produce the proof became the absolute, undeniable confirmation of his guilt. Shattering the quiet with incredible softness, Johnson spoke with the authentic sorrow of a teacher catching a student in a massive lie, stating plainly, "You can't show it, Senator, because it doesn't exist. It never existed. The intelligence community explicitly told you it didn't exist, and you went on television for 6 years and told America it did." Likening Schiff to the absolute worst kind of cheating student who gets caught and then loudly complains to the class that the exam was rigged, Johnson pointed out that Schiff was caught fabricating evidence, shamelessly told his donors his punishment was unjust, and managed to rake in $8.1 million from that very fake outrage. Landing the final devastating blow, Johnson declared, "That's not a mistake, Senator. That's a career," before deliberately closing his heavy binder, sliding his pen down the spine, and announcing, "No further questions." Snapping out of his paralysis, Schiff's frantic counterattack lasted precisely 2 minutes and 31 seconds. He mechanically assembled a defense exactly like a master builder erecting a fake wall just to make it look sturdy, aggressively attacking partisan bias, ripping into Durham's supposedly flawed probe, and citing shifting intelligence reports before stubbornly insisting, "I stand by everything I said." However, this slick response was nothing more than a desperate prosecutor's closing pitch to the court of public opinion, meant only to stall the brutal verdict. It tackled absolutely none of the actual substance, completely ignoring the damning briefing record, the cynical staff emails, the deceptive fundraising tactics, the 11 scheduled media leaks, and the fundamental demand to see the so-called evidence. Johnson showed zero reaction, simply rising to his feet to methodically button his suit jacket, acting as if Schiff didn't even exist as he walked out of the dead silent room. The apocalyptic fallout was instantaneous, fueled by 4 viral clips that escaped the room. It began with a 1.7-second video contrasting Johnson reading the February 2018 intelligence memo stating, has not identified corroborated evidence right next to Schiff, promising plenty of evidence in plain sight, finally answering the 6-year-old question of where is the evidence, and racking up an unbelievable 37 million shares within 24 hours. The second bombshell clip featured the damning staff email proving the clip travels before the correction, which instantly became the cultural shorthand for Schiff's entire legacy, compelling CNN's Jake Tapper to grimly admit on live TV that the media had handed him an unchecked microphone. The third disastrous video was the lie about a lie side-by-side breakdown of the official censure against the manipulative campaign email. It spread like wildfire, directly pushing the FEC to use the $8.1 million from a lie about a lie argument to launch a massive investigation into illegal federal election solicitations. The fourth devastating soundbite, that's not a leak. That's a schedule, rippled deeply through the intelligence world, leading veteran spies to grimly confirm that if the timeline was accurate, the leaker had committed a series of serious federal felonies. The savage political blowback happened instantly as the United States Senate swiftly voted 54-43 to strip Adam Schiff of his spot on the prestigious Senate Intelligence Committee. It was the first time in Senate history a sitting member was explicitly denied a coveted assignment strictly due to their behavior in a previous chamber, permanently unplugging his toxic brand from its ultimate power source. Wasting no time, Attorney General Kash Patel officially forwarded the classified leak accusations and the damning FBI 302 report straight to the DOJ's criminal division. He demanded an immediate probe into the illegal sharing of national security secrets under 18 U.S.C. Section 798, a severe violation that carries a crushing penalty of up to 10 years in federal lockup. Federal grand jury subpoenas were fired off rapidly, aggressively targeting Schiff's private communications and sweeping up his staff's records from 2017 all the way to 2023. The fallout morphed into a full-scale criminal probe backed by overwhelming subpoena power, aimed directly at a sitting United States senator. The media bloodbath immediately followed, highlighted by CNN issuing a historic editor's note-taking deep responsibility, admitting their massive coverage of Schiff should have fiercely challenged his claims in light of the newly unsealed February 2018 memo. Meanwhile, MSNBC quietly wiped 47 explosive Schiff interviews from their YouTube channel over the tense 2 weeks that followed. Adding to the ruin, Schiff's celebrated bestseller Midnight in Washington suddenly saw return rates skyrocket past actual retail sales for 3 straight weeks, compelling his publisher to indefinitely cancel the paperback release since the book's entire foundation was violently destroyed by one single classified paper he autographed back in 2018. Throughout this total collapse, Speaker Johnson stayed completely quiet until a frantic reporter cornered him in a busy Capitol corridor. Johnson simply adjusted his glasses and quietly reflected that the most painful duty a teacher has is gently showing a failing student the massive gap between what they loudly claimed and what was actually true. He ended the short conversation by looking away and firmly declaring, "Someone checked." Miles away from the marble corridors of Washington, the shockwave slammed into everyday Americans with brutal impact, making its way to places like Madisonville, Louisiana, where Gerald Tibito stood silently behind the scuffed counter of his bait shop, mesmerized by the endless replays of the explosive showdown. As a regular customer stood holding a dripping bag of bait, Gerald shattered the quiet with a folksy anecdote about a man named Boudreaux, pointing out that if a guy loudly brags about catching a 1-2 pound bass, he better actually have the fish in his cooler, because if it's empty, he's just spinning a tall tale. Gerald noted that Senator Schiff spent 6 agonizing years convincing America he had hooked the absolute biggest fish in political history, Yet when Johnson finally cracked open the cooler, there was absolutely nothing inside. He added the painful realization that the absolute worst part is the man knew the cooler was totally empty the whole time he was staring into the camera and enthusiastically describing the giant catch. As the patron walked out into the humid air, Gerald turned his attention back to the glowing screen, showing Mike Johnson methodically closing his massive binder, and as he aggressively scrubbed his old counter, he whispered, "Someone checked," to the empty room. Hundreds of miles north in Middletown, Ohio, Crystal Atkins sat utterly exhausted inside the sterile break room of the Brighter Days Recovery Center, alongside a woman named Donna, both fixated on the blaring TV screen. Crystal's empty voice cut through the silence, noting that this particular political disaster was entirely different from the usual scandals about stolen funds or blown budgets, because this specific betrayal involved the absolute worst kind of deception, the knowing lie. She broke down how an incredibly powerful figure loudly bragged about holding evidence for 6 straight years, even though the transcript proved he was warned in a top-secret room that no such evidence existed, yet he coldly marched onto TV sets to look the public directly in the eye and swear it did. Shaking her head, Crystal pointed out that when a top leader knows the absolute truth but loudly screams the exact opposite for 6 years to 330 million innocent citizens, they aggressively manipulate the public into believing a total fiction. When the ugly truth finally spills out, the public violently loses all trust in the very next person who bravely stands up to say, "I have evidence," even if that next person is actually telling the honest truth. Getting up to wash out her cheap plastic cup, Crystal quietly noted that the real, lasting destruction wasn't the $8.1 million scammed or the leaked secrets, but the total and utter exhaustion of the nation's faith. And faith doesn't just magically reappear just because someone finally holds a hearing. As Donna stared blankly at the monitor, watching Johnson step onto the elevator while noting someone checked, Crystal grimly responded that someone always eventually checks. But the real tragedy is whether anyone even cares when they finally do. She then walked back into the group room where 8 shattered people were fighting to stay sober, while the TV played endlessly to an empty room. Freezing on those 15 agonizing seconds, the terrifying blank stare, and the completely empty cooler before abruptly slashing to a loud commercial. If you've stayed with a story this long, you have just witnessed exactly what goes down when a highly classified memo, buried in a dark vault for 8 years, violently smashes into 6 arrogant years of TV grandstanding, proving beyond a doubt that the man who promised America he had the proof was explicitly warned in a secure room that the proof did not exist. Hit that like button if Mike Johnson powerfully proved to you that the most critical question in all of politics is forever the simplest one: show me the evidence. Subscribe for more explosive breakdowns where hard facts and heavy binders utterly demolish fake narratives, and where cold, hard transcripts brutally destroy slick media appearances. Share this crucial deep dive with anyone who suffered through 6 exhausting years of hearing. I have seen evidence and desperately wanted to know where it was hiding. Drop a comment below telling us your absolute favorite moment. The devastating transcript reveal, the dark reality that the clip travels before the correction, the jaw-dropping campaign email comparison, the chilling realization that it was a schedule rather than a leak, the haunted pen moving entirely on its own, or those suffocating 15 seconds of pure silence following. Show it to us. Turn your notifications on because the briefing transcript is officially out in the wild. The Intelligence Committee violently rejected his seat. The criminal referral to Kash Patel is incredibly active. Federal grand jury subpoenas are currently flying. CNN awkwardly published a historic apology. And somewhere in a pin-drop quiet room, a massive binder is finally shut, a pen rests on its spine, and an exhausted teacher is walking slowly to the elevator whispering, "Someone checked." Schiff walked into the battle armed with a mountain of fake credentials and 2 rehearsed minutes of absolute nothingness, while Johnson arrived armed with a single binder, and 15 agonizing seconds of everything. It proved definitively that when Schiff bragged, "I have seen evidence," and Johnson fired back, "Show it." 15 seconds of pure, unadulterated terror and a totally empty cooler became the final, undeniable answer. God bless the 330 million Americans who listened to "I have seen evidence" and genuinely believed it, simply because the powerful chairman of the Intelligence Committee looked at a TV camera and swore it was true. God bless the innocent supporters who generously handed over $8.1 million because they were shamelessly lied to and told his censure was a badge of courage. God bless the devoted intelligence operatives who had to watch their most heavily guarded secrets miraculously pop up in newspapers exactly 72 hours after their highly classified briefings. And God bless the dedicated teachers who still fight to show their young students that the single greatest thing you can ever do with your voice is tell the absolute truth. God bless anyone who has ever put their deep faith in a powerful figure hiding behind a fancy title, a top secret clearance, and a TV lens, only to violently learn 6 years later in a quiet Tuesday, hearing that the cooler was totally empty, proving once and for all that while the fake clip undeniably ran faster than the truth, the devastating correction has finally caught up. But as the massive steel doors of the federal courthouse violently swing open and relentless grand jury subpoenas ruthlessly hunt down every last email in the vault, one chilling question remains permanently suspended in the dead silence. What exactly happens to a totally shattered political empire when the desperate lies finally stop spreading, the studio lights flip off, and the FBI knocks heavily on the front door?